At exactly 2:17 a.m., Sarah Whitmore woke up with the strange certainty that something was wrong. Not from a nightmare, not from a sound loud enough to startle her awake. It was subtler than that, an uneasy pull in her chest, the kind that made her sit up in bed before her mind could catch up. The house was dark and quiet, the way it always was in her small Ohio suburb. No traffic, no sirens, just the low hum of the refrigerator somewhere down the hall. Then she heard it. Thud. Sarah froze, her fingers tightening around the edge of her blanket. The sound hadn't come from inside the house. It was distant, muffled, almost polite. She held her breath, listening. Nothing. She exhaled, telling herself it was just the old house settling. The heating system kicked on sometimes with strange noises. Her neighbors warned her about raccoons knocking over trash cans at night. She lay back down, closing her eyes. Thud, thud. This time it was unmistakable. Sarah's heart began to pound. The sound came again, slow, deliberate, and closer than before. Not a bang, not a crash. It was rhythmic, intentional, like someone knocking, but wrong somehow. Too heavy, too low. She reached for her phone on the nightstand and checked the time again. 2:17 a.m. No missed calls. No emergency alerts. The neighborhood watch app was silent. Her fingers hovered over the screen, debating whether to call someone, anyone. But what would she say? Someone is knocking on my door, but it doesn't sound like a person. That thought made her stomach twist. Another knock echoed through the house, vibrating faintly through the floorboards. Sarah swung her legs out of bed, the cold hardwood biting into her feet. She moved slowly, quietly, as if whoever, or whatever, was outside might hear her. The hallway felt longer than usual. Shadows stretched along the walls, cast by the moonlight slipping through the blinds. She passed framed photos she barely noticed anymore. Her parents smiling at a barbecue, her younger self holding a college diploma, a picture of the house on the day she bought it, proud, hopeful, alone. The knocking came again. Closer. Now it was coming from the front door. Sarah stopped at the corner leading into the living room, her pulse roaring in her ears. Her first instinct was to turn around, lock herself in the bedroom, and call the police. That was what you were supposed to do. That was what every true crime podcast warned about. Late-night knocks never led to anything good. But then she noticed something that didn't make sense. Between the knocks there was a sound, soft, uneven, almost like breathing. A faint scraping noise followed, as if something was shifting its weight against the door. Sarah crept forward and peered through the narrow gap between the wall and the living room doorway. The front door stood solid and closed, its frosted glass panel glowing faintly from the porch light she always left on at night. Nothing moved behind it. Then a shadow passed across the glass. Low, broad, not tall enough to be a person standing upright. Sarah's mouth went dry. The shadow lingered, swaying slightly, and she realized the breathing sound wasn't coming from the house at all. It was coming from outside, ragged, labored, and close enough that she felt it in her chest. Thud. The door shuddered lightly. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth to keep from gasping. Whoever, or whatever, was out there wasn't trying to break in. The knock was controlled, almost careful. She took another step closer, her body moving before her mind approved. The porch light flickered faintly, and for just a second the shadow lifted, something rose, then dropped again. Like a raised arm. Or a paw. Her thoughts spiraled. A dog, at this hour, knocking. That was ridiculous. Dogs scratched, dogs barked. Dogs didn't knock on doors like they understood how houses worked. Another knock sounded, weaker this time, followed by a low, strained whine that sent chills down her spine. It wasn't aggressive. It was desperate. Sarah's fear began to mix with something else, confusion, concern, and an uncomfortable sense of responsibility. Whatever was outside wasn't leaving, and whatever it was running out of strength. She reached for the light switch and flipped it on. The living room flooded with warm yellow light, banishing the shadows but doing nothing to calm her nerves. Slowly, she approached the door, each step heavy with hesitation. She leaned forward and pressed her eye to the clear edge of the frosted glass. What she saw made her stumble back. A pair of eyes stared up at her from the other side of the door. Dark, intelligent, glossy with pain. They weren't human eyes, but they were unmistakably aware. Sarah's breath caught as she realized what she was looking at. A German shepherd stood on her porch, its body angled awkwardly, one paw lifted against the door as if it had knocked and was waiting for an answer. Its fur was matted and dull, clinging to a frame far too thin for a dog of its size. And beneath that, her stomach dropped as she noticed the swollen belly, round, heavy, unmistakable. The dog was pregnant. As Sarah stared, frozen in disbelief, the German shepherd shifted its weight and let out a faint, broken sound. Not a bark, not a growl, but a whimper so soft it barely carried through the door. Its raised paw trembled, then tapped weakly against the wood one last time. Thud! The sound echoed through the silent house. And then the dog's legs buckled. Sarah watched in horror as the animal collapsed against her door, sliding down until its body lay curled on the porch, chest heaving, eyes still locked on hers through the glass. A dark stain spread beneath its hind leg, barely visible in the porch light. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, her fear forgotten in an instant. Her hand hovered inches from the doorknob. Every warning she'd ever heard screamed in her head, "Don't open the door. You don't know the animal. It could be dangerous." But the dog wasn't lunging. It wasn't barking. It wasn't trying to force its way inside. It had come here to ask for help. And now it was running out of time. As the German shepherd's eyes fluttered and began to close, Sarah realized with a sinking feeling that if she didn't open that door right now, whatever had brought the dog to her house might never get the chance to finish its story. Sarah's hand hovered over the doorknob, frozen. Her heart thundered in her chest as the dog's labored breathing grew louder, each exhale a desperate plea. Fear clawed at her mind. What if it lashed out? What if it carried disease? Yet something deeper, something primal whispered, "It needs you." Slowly she twisted the knob. The door creaked open and the sight that greeted her nearly made her stumble back. The German shepherd lifted her head weakly, ears flattened, eyes glistening in the porch light. Her fur was matted with dirt and blood, the telltale signs of some violent struggle. Sarah noticed a long scratch across her flank and her stomach clenched. Whoever or whatever had hurt this dog had done it badly. The dog's paw reached out again, trembling against the wooden threshold. A low, guttural whine escaped her throat. Sarah instinctively knelt, holding out a hand. The animal hesitated for a heartbeat before nudging her palm with its wet nose. The cold metal of the doorknob pressed into Sarah's hand, but she didn't care. She wrapped her other arm around the dog's neck, careful not to hurt her. The animal collapsed into her arms, shivering violently. Okay, it's all right," Sarah whispered. She glanced back toward the house, her rational mind screaming that calling 911 was the first step. But as she scooped the dog fully inside, the creature's body flopped against her chest, heavy with exhaustion and the unmistakable weight of pregnancy. The smell of wet fur and faint blood filled the air, making Sarah's stomach turn, yet she couldn't stop petting the dog. She placed her on the living room rug, using the towels she grabbed from the linen closet. The dog huffed in pain, flinching at every minor movement, her eyes pleading. Sarah noticed the swelling in her belly, the tightness of her skin stretched over tiny lives she could only imagine waiting inside. She had never seen a dog in labor before, but instinct told her this wasn't just discomfort. It was urgent. As she held the dog gently, Sarah realized the seriousness of the situation. The whines grew louder, sharper, more insistent. The dog's body tensed violently, and Sarah could feel her trembling as a surge of panic hit her. She reached for her phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands, giving the dispatcher a hurried, breathless account. "It's a German shepherd, pregnant. She's in pain. I think I think she's going into labor." The dispatcher's calm voice cut through the panic. "Stay with her, make her comfortable, spread towels on the floor, keep her warm and calm. I'll stay on the line." Sarah moved quickly, arranging pillows and blankets to create a soft nest. The dog lay down, shifting slightly, groaning with each contraction. Sarah's hands hovered over the dog's body, unsure where to touch, how to help, how to do anything without hurting her. Yet every second mattered. She felt tiny, powerless, but also unshakably responsible. The dog's eyes met hers, wide and trusting, a silent plea echoing louder than words could. Then it happened. The first pup began to emerge. Sarah's breath caught. Her instincts screamed to help, but the dispatcher guided her through every step. She gently assisted, cradling the tiny, wet, fragile puppy in her hands as it let out a faint squeak. Relief flooded through her, one life saved, but the German Shepherd tensed again immediately. Another contraction hit harder. Another pup followed, even smaller, struggling to take its first breath. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She had never felt such a combination of awe, terror, and responsibility in her life. Suddenly, a third contraction gripped the dog, sharp and intense. This time the puppy didn't emerge easily. The mother screamed, well, her version of a scream, a sharp, pained yelp that sliced through the room. Sarah's hands shook as she tried to follow the dispatcher's instructions, pressing gently, guiding, hopping, praying. The little body barely budged. Sweat dripped down Sarah's temple, mingling with tears she couldn't stop. The dog's eyes locked on hers again, filled with panic and trust all at once. She trembled violently, shivering from pain, exhaustion, and fear. Sarah whispered, "I've got you. I won't let anything happen to you or your bobbies." Just when it seemed hope was fading, the dispatcher's voice broke through. "Keep going, gently. You're almost there. She's depending on you." With one final effort, the tiny puppy emerged, limp at first but slowly crying, a feeble, miraculous sound. Sarah exhaled shakily, holding the little life against her chest. But the German Shepherd wasn't done. She let out a low, strained growl, her body rigid, signaling another contraction. The weight of reality slammed into Sarah. This was far from over. And then it happened. A sudden, sharp yelp from the mother, followed by a shuddering collapse. Sarah froze, horror gripping her heart. She watched the German Shepherd's body go limp, her heavy breathing uneven, her eyes fluttering. The puppies, still wet and fragile, whimpered against the towels. Sarah's mind raced, terror clawing at her chest. If something happens to her now. Her hands trembled as she leaned closer, whispering words of comfort. But even through the fear, a flicker of determination sparked in her chest. She couldn't let this end here. Not with the puppies, not with the mother, not when she had the chance to save them. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Inside, Sarah felt the weight of every second, every breath, every heartbeat, knowing that life and death were balanced on a fragile edge. The German Shepherd opened her eyes, dim and desperate, locking onto Sarah's gaze. A single thought seemed to echo in that look: "Please don't let me fail." And in that moment, Sarah knew one thing with absolute certainty: this night would change everything. The ambulance siren wailed faintly in the distance, a promise of help, but the question remained: would they arrive in time? Sarah's heart pounded so loudly she thought the German Shepherd might hear it. The dog, curled on the towels, groaned with each contraction, her body shivering violently. Blood and fluid stained the blanket beneath her, and Sarah's stomach churned, but she couldn't look away. There was no time to panic, no time to think rationally. Life demanded action. She grabbed her phone again, still connected to the dispatcher, and tried to describe what she saw. Her words stumbled over each other. She's in labor, 3 puppies, maybe more, one isn't breathing yet, I don't know what to do." Her voice cracked as the dog's eyes met hers again, full of raw, unfiltered fear. The dispatcher's calm voice cut through, guiding her hand, her instincts, every move she made. The first puppy had begun breathing on its own, tiny squeaks filling the quiet room, but the second needed help. Sarah followed the dispatcher's instructions to rub the puppy with a soft towel, stimulating it, trying to coax it into life. Her fingers were trembling uncontrollably. She hadn't touched a newborn puppy before. let alone one that might not survive. Yet when the pup let out a small, pitiful cry, she felt a rush of relief so intense it left her breathless. But the German Shepherd wasn't done. Her body tensed violently again, and Sarah realized with a sickening certainty there were more puppies and the labor wasn't going smoothly. Another contraction hit, sharper than the previous ones. The dog yelped, rolling slightly on the towels, her eyes wide with panic. Sarah instinctively pressed her hands gently against her sides, trying to guide the next pup, but it wasn't moving easily. Time became a blur. Sweat soaked Sarah's hair and ran down her neck as she worked frantically, listening to the dispatcher's instructions, whispering words of encouragement to the trembling animal. "You're doing so well. I've got you. I won't let anything happen to you or your bobbies." Her voice, shaky but determined, filled the room with a fragile calm that seemed to reassure the German Shepherd. The third pup was still stuck. Sarah could feel it pressing against the birth canal, tiny limbs folded awkwardly, unresponsive. Panic surged in her chest. She had never done anything like this before. Fear of hurting the mother collided with the fear of losing the puppy. Her hands trembled as she tried to manipulate the position gently. The dog let out a high-pitched, terrified yelp, pressing her head against Sarah's arm, nails digging into the towels. And then it happened. The puppy moved. A flicker, a twitch. Sarah's hands held it carefully, coaxing it, urging it to breathe. One breath, two. A small squeak. The puppy's tiny chest rose and fell, fragile but alive. Sarah exhaled shakily, tears streaming down her face. She looked down at the mother, exhausted and trembling, eyes half closed but still focused on her litter. A surge of gratitude and awe swept through Sarah. She had saved one more life. Yet the danger wasn't over. The dog's body went rigid again, another contraction gripping her violently. Sarah's stomach dropped. The final pup hadn't emerged yet. This one felt stuck. The German Shepherd's whines grew desperate, almost human in their anguish. Sarah could feel the trembling in her body mirror the mother's, her fear mounting as she realized the situation could spiral out of control at any second. She tried to steady her hands. "I can do this," she whispered, though her voice wavered. Her rational mind shouted, "Call someone, do something professional," but she was alone except for the dispatcher's voice guiding her. Her own instincts screamed louder than fear. "You can save them all. You have to." The mother yelped sharply again, her body convulsing. The final puppy slipped slightly, then paused. Sarah's hands moved instinctively, supporting, guiding, praying. Time slowed to the rhythm of the dog's labored breathing and the fragile life in her hands. Minutes stretched like hours. Sweat, tears, blood, and hope mingled into a chaotic storm that left Sarah breathless, every nerve on fire. Finally, with one shuddering push, the puppy emerged. It was tiny, fragile, wet, almost translucent. Sarah rubbed it gently, whispering encouragement, heart pounding as she watched for any sign of life. Then, a squeak. A small, weak cry that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet living room. The mother's eyes softened, her body trembling, but relief radiated through her in tiny, shuddering breaths. Sarah allowed herself a fleeting moment of triumph. She had done it. 3 lives saved. But the German Shepherd wasn't done yet. Her body trembled violently, weak and exhausted, and Sarah realized something chilling. The mother was in pain beyond what she could handle alone. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. Her gums were pale. Panic clawed at Sarah's chest. "Please hold on," she whispered, pressing a hand gently against the mother's side. She looked around frantically, realizing the situation had escalated beyond her living room, beyond towels and blankets. This was beyond anything she had ever experienced. The dispatcher's voice reminded her to stay calm, to keep the dog warm, to monitor breathing. But Sarah knew instinctively that professional help was now critical. The distant wail of sirens reached her ears. The ambulance was close. Relief surged briefly, help was almost here. But as she looked down at the German Shepherd, eyes wide, trembling, she realized the fight wasn't over. Not yet. The puppies were alive, but their mother was still in danger. Her breaths were shallow, punctuated by weak whines. Sarah's hands hovered over her trembling body, unsure if she could do enough to save her. In the corner of her mind, a new realization settled. This wasn't a random stray. The scars along the dog's flanks, the matted fur, the terrified intelligence in her eyes, it was deliberate. Someone had hurt her. Someone had left her like this. And somehow, in the middle of the night, alone and broken, she had found Sarah's door. The ambulance pulled into the driveway, its lights casting harsh blue shadows through the living room windows. The German Shepherd's head lifted slightly, eyes focused on the approaching paramedics, then back to Sarah. A quiet understanding passed between them. She had come this far, but the next moments would decide everything. As the paramedics burst through the door, equipment in hand, the mother let out a final, weak whine that seemed to shake the entire room. Sarah felt her heart in her throat. She had helped them this far, but she knew instinctively the real battle for survival was just beginning. And with that, the dog's trembling body and the tiny, fragile puppies rested in the hands of strangers. Yet every pair of eyes in the room knew. One misstep, one moment too late, and everything could be lost. The question hung in the air, electric and terrifying. Would Luna, the mother, survive the night, or had the danger only just begun? The ambulance doors slammed open, the harsh fluorescent lights cutting through the warm glow of Sarah's living room. Paramedics burst in, carrying equipment, their faces set in masks of focused urgency. Sarah's hands trembled as she lifted the trembling German Shepherd, feeling the fragile weight of her swollen, injured body and the tiny, squirming puppies nestled against her. Every second seemed to stretch infinitely, every breath a reminder of how close life and death were tangled together in this room. "Easy, girl, easy," Sarah whispered, her voice shaky but firm. The dog, weak and exhausted, whimpered, pressing her head into Sarah's shoulder. One paramedic, a tall man with calm eyes, knelt beside them. "Ma'am, we need to get her on a stretcher. Can you help us?" Sarah nodded, tears blurring her vision. She carefully placed the puppies on a clean towel on the couch, keeping them warm, their tiny bodies trembling, breaths faint and irregular. The sight of them, so small, so vulnerable, made her chest tighten painfully. She could barely think of anything else. Her life had been ordinary minutes ago. Now it was a race against time and mortality. As the paramedics lifted Luna, the German Shepherd, onto the stretcher, her body convulsed violently with a fresh contraction. A sharp yelp escaped her, slicing through the room. One paramedic quickly checked her abdomen, noting the distress. "She's in labor, but there's complication. Could be dystocia, puppy stuck." His voice was calm but carried the weight of urgency. Sarah's stomach twisted in fear. What does that mean?" she asked, voice shaking. She reached for the dog, holding her gently as if her touch could somehow stabilize the shaking body. "It means the puppy might be stuck, ma'am," he replied, checking vital signs. "We need to get her to the hospital immediately. She's at risk. All of them are." The siren blared back to life as the ambulance doors shut. Sarah clutched the stretcher's edge as they sped toward the animal hospital, her heart pounding in rhythm with the flashing lights. She watched Luna through the glass partition, body trembling, eyes darting around, occasionally fixing on Sarah with a desperate, trusting gaze. Her paws twitched with every contraction. Inside, the puppies lay on towels, squeaking softly. Sarah held one, checking its breathing, feeling a fragile warmth radiate from its tiny body. She couldn't believe how tiny and defenseless they were. Each second felt like a lifetime, every sound amplified, the squeak of a puppy, the wheezing of the mother, the wail of the siren outside. At the hospital, the team met them at the door. Nurses and vets moved quickly, assessing Luna's injuries and labor complications. They took her from Sarah's arms, securing her on the surgical table, oxygen masks placed gently over her nose, warm blankets beneath her trembling body. The room smelled of antiseptic and urgency. Sarah's knees hit the floor as the vet explained the gravity of the situation. "She's extremely weak. There's a chance we may lose her or one of the puppies if we don't act quickly. Are you okay with staying and helping if we need you?" Sarah's throat tightened. There was no question. I'll do whatever you need," she said, swallowing the lump in her throat. The first puppy was placed in an incubator. The second, tiny and fragile, was wrapped in a soft towel, breathing shallow but alive. But as the vet worked on Luna, a complication became immediately clear. The third puppy was stuck. A tense hush filled the room. Luna's body trembled violently, every muscle taut with effort and pain. The vets quickly assessed, moving with precision. "We're going to assist manually," one said, gloves snapping. "We have to be gentle but firm. She's critical." Sarah watched, holding her breath, as gloved hands worked carefully to free the puppy. Luna's yelp pierced the room, a heart-wrenching sound that made Sarah's chest clench painfully. She wanted to reach out, to touch, to help, but the professionals moved with skill and authority. Her role was support, steady presence, emotional anchor for the terrified animal. Minutes stretched, sweat dripped from Sarah's forehead. Her hands were clenched into fists, her knuckles white. She whispered softly, "You can do this. You're so strong, so brave." Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. The room was tense, every second an eternity. Then finally, the puppy emerged. Wet, fragile, and silent for a terrifying moment before letting out a faint squeak. Relief washed over Sarah in a wave so strong it left her gasping. But Luna's body convulsed again, eyes half closed, trembling violently. The vet's assistant whispered, "We've got to stabilize her. She's hemorrhaging internally, could be life-threatening." Panic clawed at Sarah's chest. "What can I do?" she asked, voice trembling. "Stay here, keep her calm, talk to her, your presence matters." The vet's words were simple but heavy with significance. Sarah leaned close, stroking Luna's matted fur, murmuring encouragement. "I'm here, you're okay, you're so strong, you're going to make it." Luna trembled in response, a fragile, exhausted trust in her eyes. The pups squeaked softly, still in their incubators. Every second felt fragile, suspended between life and death. Sarah's heart ached with fear, hope, and love all at once. Then a sudden beep from the monitor drew everyone's attention. Luna's heart rate dipped dangerously. The room went still. Sarah's stomach dropped. Her hands hovered over the dog, powerless to stop the critical moment that hung like a shadow in the air. "Prepare for emergency surgery. Now," the vet barked, voice steady but urgent. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as the stretcher was wheeled away. She followed close behind, clutching her jacket, whispering encouragement. "You're not alone. You're going to be okay. Please survive for them. Please survive." The surgery door closed. Silence settled in the room behind it, punctuated only by the faint, terrified cries of the puppies. Sarah sank into a chair, chest heaving, mind racing. She had watched the mother fight to bring life into the world, and now she had to wait powerless as professionals worked to save them. The minutes stretched like hours. Every sound, the soft cry of a pup, the beeping monitor, the whisper of gloves on the surgical tray, pierced her nerves. Her hands shook, her knees ached, and she realized just how much hope she had pinned on this desperate, injured dog who had knocked on her door in the dead of night. And then came the faintest sound, a whimper from behind the surgical door, soft but unmistakable. Sarah held her breath. The vets hadn't said anything yet, but that whimper, it was life. It was survival. And yet, as she gripped the edge of the chair, a gnawing fear settled in her chest. Luna was still inside. The final outcome, the one that would decide the fate of her and her puppies, still hung in the balance. Every heartbeat was a question, every second a fragile thread in the fight between life and death. Would Luna make it through the surgery? Or would the night's miracles be snatched away just when hope was within reach? The fluorescent lights of the animal hospital flickered faintly as Sarah paced outside the surgical suite, her hands clasped tightly together. The muffled sounds of machines, beeps, hisses, and soft scuffs filtered through the closed door, each one sending another ripple of tension through her chest. Every so often, a vet would appear briefly, nodding or shaking their head, their expression unreadable. Sarah couldn't tell if it was good news or bad. Minutes felt like hours, hours like a lifetime. Finally, Dr. Mendes, the lead veterinarian, stepped out, gloved hands slick with antiseptic. "Ma'am," she said carefully, her voice tight but not unkind. "She's stable. The surgery went as well as we could hope. All the puppies survived too, though they're fragile and will need intensive care. Relief crashed through Sarah in a wave so strong it left her shaking. She had expected death, had feared failure at every moment, but life had prevailed. 3 tiny puppies squeaked softly from their incubators, fragile but alive, their cries sharp against the quiet hum of the hospital. Sarah walked to the incubators, gently brushing a finger against one of the tiny, trembling bodies. It felt impossibly small, impossibly real. Each squeak made her chest tighten with both fear and awe. She glanced over at Luna, now lying on a padded surgical bed, her body draped in a blanket. Her breaths were shallow but steady, eyes half closed, tail flicking weakly whenever Sarah whispered softly to her. Even in pain, Luna's trust was unwavering. But as Sarah bent closer, she noticed something that hadn't been visible before. Bruises ran along Luna's sides, some old and faded, others raw. A long, narrow scar etched across one flank hinted at something far more sinister than neglect. The matted fur had hidden evidence of a life that had been brutal. Sarah's stomach churned. The reality hit her in a wave of shock. This dog hadn't just suffered an accident. Someone had deliberately hurt her, repeatedly, and yet somehow she had escaped. Somehow she had found her way to Sarah's door. "Dr. Mendes," Sarah asked softly, her voice quivering, Do you think she was abused?" The vet nodded grimly. "Definitely. She's been through physical trauma, broken bones that had healed improperly, rope burns, signs of repeated stress, and the timing of her pregnancy suggests she was used for breeding, then abandoned. That's why she's so thin. We estimate she's lost a third of her normal body weight." Sarah sank into a chair, heart hammering. Her eyes darted to Luna, who now opened her eyes, dark and intelligent, locking onto Sarah's face. A shiver ran through her. The look wasn't just fear, it was recognition. Luna knew she was safe, but she also knew something else. She had come from somewhere, and someone had wanted to take her away from her survival. Dr. Mendes hesitated, then pulled out a microchip scanner. "We'll check if she's registered. Sometimes we can find an owner this way." The scanner beeped faintly, then displayed information on a screen. Sarah read the details aloud. "Luna, last registered, suburban breeder, reported missing months ago." Her voice caught. "Reported stolen." The room went silent. The weight of the revelation pressed down on her. Luna hadn't wandered aimlessly, hadn't escaped by accident. She had fled. And not only that, she had somehow remembered a place of safety, a house where lights stayed on, a house that might take her in. She had chosen Sarah. Sarah leaned closer to Luna, brushing the fur along her head. The dog's ears twitched, her breathing steady but shallow. She pressed her wet nose against Sarah's hand, a quiet, trusting gesture that seemed to say, "I knew you'd be here. I trusted you." The vet explained, "This is why she acted the way she did, coming to your door specifically. Dogs remember safety, routine, and kindness. She sought help from a human she instinctively knew wouldn't hurt her. That's remarkable behavior, especially in her condition." Sarah felt a wave of awe. She had always known animals were intelligent, but this was something else entirely. This German shepherd, battered and scared, had made a calculated, desperate decision to save herself and her puppies, and she had chosen Sarah. As she reached down to stroke Luna's head again, Sarah noticed subtle signs of continued distress. Luna flinched at sudden movements, ears flattening at shadows. Her trust was strong, but the trauma lingered. Sarah's heart ached at the thought of what Luna had endured, and a determination settled in her chest. She wouldn't just save Luna physically, she would help heal her emotionally too. Then the phone rang. It was the animal shelter calling, following up on the microchip registration. Sarah answered hesitantly, and a voice on the other end caused her blood to run cold. "Yes, this is Luna," the voice said, clipped and businesslike. "We have a report that she's been recovered. I'm the owner. I expect her returned immediately. Legal paperwork is in order." Sarah froze, heart racing. The voice was calm, precise, but there was a hard edge to it. Her stomach sank. Could they take Luna away after everything she had endured, after she had chosen Sarah's door as the one place to seek safety? Dr. Mendes placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll need to verify ownership and check for evidence of abuse," she said quietly. "If the claims are true, the law will decide, but don't panic yet." Sarah swallowed hard, glancing back at Luna. The German shepherd lay curled against the blanket, weak but alert, ears twitching at every sound. The puppies squeaked softly, tiny lives hanging by the slimmest thread, all of them safe for now. But the threat of being torn from this fragile sanctuary loomed like a dark shadow. Sarah's chest tightened with determination. She had promised herself she would protect these lives tonight, and she wasn't going to let legal threats undo that. She pressed her hand against Luna's head again, whispering softly, "I've got you. I won't let anything happen to you, not now, not ever." But as she stared at the tiny, vulnerable creatures and the exhausted mother before her, a chilling realization settled in her chest. Survival had brought them here, yes, but the fight was far from over. The real battle, the battle for Luna's freedom and the safety of her puppies, was just beginning. And in the back of her mind, a terrifying thought took hold. Someone had already tried to control Luna once. What would they do next when they realized she had escaped, survived, and found sanctuary? The room was quiet, but the tension was palpable. Sarah looked down at Luna's trusting eyes and whispered again, "We're not done yet, not by a long shot." The next steps would decide everything: freedom, safety, and whether this miraculous survival story would end in triumph or tragedy. The morning sun poured through the tall hospital windows, slicing the sterile light into sharp beams that illuminated every detail of the room. Sarah sat on a hard chair, knees pressed together, hands intertwined, staring at the fragile forms before her. Luna, the battered German shepherd, lay on the surgical bed, fur damp with antiseptic, breath shallow but steady. Her puppies, no bigger than fists, were nestled in warm towels under the vigilant eyes of the veterinary team. Despite the relief of seeing them alive, a creeping tension gripped Sarah. Dr. Mendes approached, her face etched with exhaustion and concern. "Sarah," she said quietly, "Luna is stable for now, but she's extremely weak. Internal bleeding and infection from her injuries could worsen rapidly. If we don't monitor her carefully, she could go into shock at any moment." Sarah's chest tightened. The thought of losing Luna, after everything, after the journey she had made to survive, was unbearable. Her hands shook as she reached out to stroke the dog's head. Luna's eyes fluttered open, a small, flickering glimmer of recognition and trust. Sarah whispered, "I've got you, stay with me. You can make it. You have to." The vet motioned for Sarah to follow them as they prepared for the next stage of care. "We're going to need to keep her in the ICU section. She'll be under observation, and we'll administer IV fluids, antibiotics, and pain relief. You can stay as long as she's stable, but this is serious." Sarah nodded, feeling a surge of fear and determination. This wasn't just about a dog. It was about survival, justice, and the fragile lives that depended on her. The puppy squeaked softly as she lifted one into her arms, warmth radiating from its tiny body. Each squeak, each tiny breath was a reminder of the stakes of life itself. As Luna was carefully lifted onto a padded stretcher, Sarah noticed the subtle tremors in her muscles. Despite the medical care, her body remained tense and strained, a living reminder of what she had endured. Sarah pressed her hand to Luna's side, feeling the faint rhythm of her heartbeat. "We're in this together," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore." The ICU team worked with meticulous precision. Luna was placed on monitoring equipment, vital signs tracked with digital screens, her temperature stabilized, and oxygen masks positioned delicately over her nose. Sarah hovered nearby, murmuring softly to calm both the dog and herself. The puppies were placed in incubators, each wrapped in warm towels, eyes closed, bodies trembling from exhaustion and the shock of the night. Time passed agonizingly slowly. Every beep from the monitors, every tiny whimper from a puppy, every shallow breath from Luna drove home the reality of the situation. Life and death teetered on a knife's edge. Sarah couldn't sit still. She paced, knelt, whispered words of encouragement, her mind replaying the events that had brought them here, the desperate knocks at her door, the frantic labor in her living room, the race to the ambulance. Hours later, a nurse pulled Sarah aside. "We're going to attempt a mild sedation to reduce stress on her body. It's risky, but her strength is fading." Sarah's stomach twisted. Sedation could help, but it could also be dangerous. "Do you think she'll survive it?" she asked, voice barely audible. The nurse shook her head. "We don't know, but without it she might not make it through the day." Sarah swallowed hard. She could see the decision reflected in Luna's eyes, even through the haze of sedation, the trust, the vulnerability, the desperate plea to stay alive. Sarah nodded. "Do it. She's strong. She's a fighter, just keep her safe." As the sedation began, Luna's body relaxed slightly, trembling easing as the medicine took effect. Sarah leaned close, whispering softly, "You've made it this far, just a little longer. You're going to see your Bobbies grow up." The tiny puppies squeaked in unison, as if responding, their fragile cries filling the ICU with life amid the sterile tension. Hours passed in a haze of monitors, beeps, and anxious packing. Sarah barely moved from Luna's side, gently stroking her head, murmuring words of reassurance that seemed to calm the dog in ways medicine couldn't. She watched the tiniest movements, the flicker of a paw, the flutter of eyelids, the soft rise and fall of her chest, and prayed for each one. Then the phone rang. It was the animal control office. Sarah answered, and the voice on the other end made her blood run cold. "Yes, this is Sarah Whitmore," the man asked. "We have a claim from the breeder who originally registered Luna. They're demanding custody. Legal paperwork is in order, and they are prepared to take her back immediately." Sarah froze, her heart racing. She glanced at Luna, weak and trusting, puppies nestled nearby, and realized the stakes had changed. Survival had brought them here, yes, but now freedom hung in the balance. Legal claims threatened to undo every second of struggle, every life saved. Dr. Mendes placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "We'll need to verify the abuse claims," she said quietly. "If it's documented, the law may side with you, but be prepared. This could get complicated." Sarah nodded, a surge of fierce determination igniting in her chest. She had watched Luna fight against odds that no animal should endure. She had helped bring her and her puppies to life. She would not let bureaucratic indifference snatch them away now. As she looked at Luna's trembling body and the tiny, fragile pups, a single thought crystallized in her mind. Survival was only the beginning. The fight for their safety and freedom was about to begin, and she would face it head-on, no matter what came next. Outside the ICU, the wind rattled the windows, a faint echo of the night's chaos. Inside, Sarah whispered to Luna, her voice steady and resolute, "We're not done yet, not by a long shot. I promised you, and I keep my promises." And in that quiet, tense room, one thing was clear. The night's miracles had saved lives, but the storm was far from over. Someone wanted to take Luna back, and the fragile thread of hope that had carried her this far was about to be tested again. Would Sarah be able to protect Luna and her puppies from those who sought to control them? Or would the law and past ownership threaten to undo every hard-won victory? News travels fast in small towns, and what had started as a desperate late-night knock on Sarah Whitmore's door had become the story of the week. By midday, neighbors were trickling into the hospital, curious whispers filling the halls. Someone had snapped a photo of the 3 tiny puppies in their incubators, and soon it was circulating on social media, shared thousands of times with captions like, "Pregnant dog escapes abuse and finds safe haven. Miracle rescue." Sarah sat by Luna's side, her hand stroking the dog's damp, matted fur. Luna had stabilized, though still weak, her breathing shallow but steady, eyes flicking between the incubators and Sarah as if measuring the loyalty of the human beside her. For the first time since the night began, Luna's trembling had eased, replaced by small, tentative movements, a paw stretch here, a low whine of recognition there. Sarah felt a fragile warmth spread through her chest. Luna was surviving. The hospital staff moved efficiently, checking IV lines, monitoring vital signs, and adjusting the incubators for the pups. But beneath the professional calm, tension lingered. The microchip had revealed Luna's original owner, a suburban breeder who claimed she had been stolen months ago. And now that claim had escalated. A man appeared at the hospital doors, slicked hair, crisp suit, legal documents clutched in hand. His eyes were sharp, calculating, every movement radiating authority. "I'm here for Luna," he said, voice smooth but firm. "She belongs to me. I have all legal rights to claim her and the puppies. You need to release them immediately." Sarah's stomach dropped. Her grip on Luna's fur tightened reflexively, as if sheer force of will could protect the dog from being taken away. She glanced at Dr. Mendes, whose face was calm but serious. "We'll need to verify ownership, sir, and review any reports of abuse," the vet said. "If Luna has been subjected to mistreatment, that will affect custody decisions." The man's lips pressed into a thin line. "Abuse claims? Preposterous. She is my property. I have the paperwork." His gaze flicked to Luna, who now lifted her head, ears slightly back but tail flicking weakly. Recognition crossed her face. She knew him. Her pupils dilated and a low, hesitant growl rumbled in her throat. Sarah froze. Luna had remembered. Despite the trauma and months of fear, she knew the presence of the man. But instead of cowering, she had instinctively protected her tiny pups, pressing herself closer to Sarah, leaning into the warmth of human safety she had chosen. The growl was quiet but filled the room with an undeniable warning. "Do not touch what is mine." Neighbors had gathered in small groups outside, watching from the street, cameras ready, phones raised. Social media buzzed with speculation, and soon a reporter arrived, microphone in hand. "We're hearing reports of a miraculous rescue," she said, eyes wide with fascination. "A dog, battered and pregnant, escaped abuse and found sanctuary in a local resident's home. Can you tell us what happened?" Sarah's throat tightened. She glanced at Luna, breathing shallow but steady, and knew this wasn't just about telling a story, it was about protecting lives. "She came to my door," Sarah said softly, her voice firm but gentle. "Alone, injured, scared, desperate. She trusted me, and I'm not going to let anything happen to her or her puppies." The reporter nodded, sensing the emotional weight behind the words. Meanwhile, the breeder's lawyer began reviewing the hospital's documentation, insisting that the dog be returned immediately. Sarah felt panic claw at her chest, but Dr. Mendes placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Documented abuse will protect her. The law recognizes that her welfare is paramount, but you have to stay calm. Any outburst could harm her case." Sarah swallowed hard and looked at Luna, whose ears had flattened against her skull, a low rumble vibrating in her chest. Even in her weakened state, Luna's instincts were sharp. She had endured months of cruelty, yet now she had a protector. She had made a choice, and that choice was Sarah. As the legal papers were scrutinized, a local animal rights activist arrived, clipboard in hand. "We've documented her injuries," the woman said, eyes flicking to the breeder. "There's no question she's been abused. Taking her back would be criminal." The tension in the room thickened. Cameras flashed. Social media notifications pinged endlessly. Sarah could feel Luna shifting beneath her hand, a subtle weight of trust pressing against her palm. The dog's eyes met Sarah's, wide and intelligent, communicating a single unspoken plea: "Don't let them take me away." Minutes felt like hours. The room hummed with anxiety, uncertainty, and the quiet, persistent whines of Luna and her puppies. Then the lead animal control officer spoke, voice firm and final. "Given the documented evidence of abuse and neglect, and the fact that she is nursing newborn puppies, Luna will remain under Sarah Whitmore's custody until a permanent home is legally determined. Any challenge must be addressed through court channels." A wave of relief washed over Sarah, almost too much to bear. She buried her face in Luna's fur, feeling the damp warmth, the tremors that still lingered from exhaustion, and whispered, "We're safe. You're safe. I've got you." Luna responded with a tentative nuzzle, pressing her head into Sarah's chest. Outside, the story exploded online. Thousands of shares, likes, and comments poured in. Luna had become a symbol of survival, courage, and trust. People called her the dog who knocked for help, literally and metaphorically. Donations flooded the hospital and rescue organization to ensure the puppies and Luna received proper care. Yet amid the public celebration, Sarah knew the fight wasn't over. Legal proceedings could still drag on. The threat of someone trying to regain control of Luna and her puppies loomed in the background. And while Luna had survived the physical trauma, the emotional scars remained, subtle but persistent. Sarah stroked Luna's head again, whispering softly, "You chose this. You came to me for a reason. I'll keep you safe. No one will take that away from us." And for the first time since the desperate knock at her door, Sarah allowed herself a small, shaky smile. Luna's eyes softened, her trembling eased, and a faint wag of her tail spoke volumes. She had survived the night. She had chosen trust over fear. And in that quiet, crowded hospital room, a fragile, hard-won peace settled over them. But Sarah knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning. Luna's recovery, the care of her puppies, and the battle for their continued freedom would require courage, persistence, and unwavering love. Every scratch on the porch, every desperate knock in the night had led to this moment, a moment of fragile hope, hanging by a thread, yet strong enough to defy the odds. And as Sarah looked at Luna and the tiny, fragile puppies, one question lingered. Could she navigate the challenges ahead and ensure that the miracles of this night would endure? Or would the shadows of the past threaten to undo all they had fought to survive? The weeks that followed were a blur of care, vigilance, and emotional intensity. Luna remained in the ICU under the watchful eyes of Dr. Mendes and the veterinary team. But with Sarah by her side, she began to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. Each day, Luna's fur regained some shine, her breathing deepened, and her trembling eased. The tiny puppies, fragile at birth, grew stronger, their squeaks becoming confident, insistent little cries that filled the hospital with life. Sarah spent hours every day at the hospital. She cradled the puppies, carefully feeding them and cleaning them, whispering soft reassurances as Luna rested nearby. With each passing day, Luna grew more alert, following Sarah's movements with intelligent, watchful eyes. At first, her trust was cautious, hesitant, but with every gentle touch, every quiet word, it deepened. Sarah felt an extraordinary bond forming, one built on trust forged in desperation and survival. Social media attention grew. The story of the pregnant German shepherd who had knocked on a woman's door in the dead of night captured hearts nationwide. Messages poured in, donations, offers of support, and inquiries from people wanting to adopt the puppies once they were old enough. The online community became an unofficial family, sending encouragement and hope to a story that had begun in fear and uncertainty. The breeder who had claimed Luna tried to push legal action, but the evidence of abuse was undeniable. Veterinarians, reports, photographs of injuries, the testimony of animal rights advocates, and the documentation of Luna's desperate flight to Sarah's door painted a clear picture. The court ruled in favor of Luna's safety, granting Sarah full custody of her and the puppies. The decision was a relief, but Sarah knew the fight was not over. Healing trauma was a process, and she was determined to guide Luna and her bobbies through it. Finally, the day came when Luna could leave the hospital. Sarah carried her carefully, the dog's head resting against her shoulder, eyes bright but still alert to every sound. Outside, the sun warmed the small suburban street, a stark contrast to the harshness of the night she had first arrived at Sarah's door. The puppies followed in a carefully prepared carrier, squeaking softly, their tiny paws stretching and wriggling as they experienced the outside world for the first time. At home, Sarah prepared a quiet, safe space. Blankets, towels, and cushions formed a nest in the corner of her living room. Luna stepped in carefully, nose twitching, ears alert. She sniffed the surroundings, then looked at Sarah, tail flicking slowly, eyes conveying an unspoken question. "Is this safe? Will it last?" "Yes," Sarah whispered. It's safe, you're home now, all of you." The puppies wriggled, exploring, squeaking, and tumbling over one another. Luna watched with a protective gaze, circling them carefully, nudging them gently, her maternal instincts strong despite the trauma she had endured. For the first time in months, Sarah saw her truly relax. Her shoulders eased, her tail wagged slightly, and she allowed herself to curl next to the puppies in the nest Sarah had made. Days turned into weeks. Luna's fur regained its luster, and her eyes, once haunted, sparkled with cautious joy. She began to play with her puppies, teaching them, nudging them, guarding them as any mother would. Sarah watched in awe, feeling a surge of pride and love. She had been the human who answered the desperate knock in the middle of the night, the one who had trusted and acted, and now she was witnessing the miracle of life flourishing before her eyes. The local community embraced Luna and her story. Sarah hosted a small adoption event for the puppies when they were old enough, and each found a loving home. The process was emotional, goodbyes filled with tears and laughter, but Luna remained with Sarah, the constant and grounding presence that had come to trust only her. Sarah often sat beside her on the porch, watching her patrol the yard, alert yet calm, as though acknowledging the sanctuary she had finally found. One evening, months after that fateful night, Sarah knelt beside Luna, brushing her soft fur under the warm glow of the porch light. "You're safe," she whispered. "All of you are safe now. You made it. We made it." Luna leaned into her hand, eyes soft and trusting, and let out a low, contented sigh. For the first time, the memory of that desperate knock in the dead of night didn't bring fear. It brought a sense of purpose, of connection, of triumph over adversity. Luna had trusted a stranger in her darkest hour, and that trust had been honored. In return, she had survived, nurtured new life, and found a home where love and safety were guaranteed. The story of the pregnant German Shepherd who knocked on a woman's door became more than just a viral sensation. It became a symbol of resilience, hope, and the power of trust. And for Sarah, every time Luna's head rested against her shoulder or her puppies nuzzled her hands, it was a reminder that sometimes miracles come on silent pause, knocking softly at your door, demanding to be answered. As the sun set, bathing the quiet Ohio street in golden light, Sarah and Luna sat side by side on the porch, the puppies nestled close. The world was still vast, unpredictable, and often cruel, but in that moment everything was perfect. They had survived, they had healed, and they had found home. The night of desperation, the fearful knocks, and the frantic race against time had led to this. A family born from courage, trust, and unwavering love, a story of life prevailing against all odds.